Yes, it is that time again. Welcome back, people. Thank you all for joining us. I am your co-host, Deante,
And I'm Shekema.
and we are the Dunlaps. Yes, we
Dunlaps.
are. We're back in it again like we never left. This is how we do it. Your best thing on the shelf, go ahead and get it off and let's get this conversation going. You know how we do it about this time, 6 o'clock every Tuesday.
That's it. That's it.
Consistency, baby. That's
All
how we
right.
do it. All right. It's love day of what we think is love day,
Yeah,
but
but well, every day
we'll
is
get
love
into
day.
that. Yeah, every day is
Every
love day.
day is love day.
That is true. That is true. You should always express love every single day. It's the best vitamin you can take. Cures everything,
It does.
or
It
at least attempts to.
Yeah, I think it does pretty good. I would say it's the best thing that has ever happened to us as human beings. That's should be the first thing we experience from the womb
Hey,
to the tomb. That's like the thing that helps us know we're alive or helps us feel alive, that connection with another human being.
yeah, that product of oxytocin. What oxytocin brings, the love drug,
That's
the
so funny.
love chemical.
You're so funny. All right. Well, you want to go first? Because you got a lot of technology facts today. You want to go
Yeah,
first?
I guess in the love for technology, we got a couple today.
Because we're actually on technology, and without it, we wouldn't
We
be
wouldn't
talking,
we,
y'all, right?
we wouldn't be doing this. We would be on
Mhm.
ham radios and market talkers trying to get this thing done, but we be doing it though. We be figuring it out. I don't care if it's smoke signals or paper airplanes. We be throwing them across the room and reading each other's notes. That's how I go. That's how the Dunlaps do it. We
That's how
get
we
in
do
it.
it.
All right. So today in technology, February 14th,
Let's go.
sometime in some year in the past. Let's do it. All right. On this day in 1876, the telephone was patented by two men. The telephone was patented on this date separately by two men, Alexander Graham Bell and Elisha Gray. This set the stage for controversy over who actually invented the telephone
Hmm.
and a drawn out legal battle.
So Elijah Gray was who?
I I need to do my
I'm
research.
finna go do it now. Keep going.
Yeah, I forget who Elisha Gray was. I
I'm looking it
know
up.
Bell was the guy. It's the guy everybody knows. Elisha Gray is a little well, and I'm familiar with his name, but I can't
Yeah. So
remember.
he was from Illinois. He was Leo, big Leo energy. He was an engineer, an American engineer. So wow.
That's ice cold.
Mm-hmm.
That's some good stuff right there. Okay, okay. We ready for the next one? Because I got four of them. Well, three more. All right. The next one. This is a good one. Most of us tech heads should be familiar with this one, or it should be somewhat understanding, or this should impact us in some way. This is the birth of IBM.
Wow.
The Computing Tabulating Recording Corporation is renamed International Business Machines, aka IBM.
Wait a
Either
minute.
way,
What was the original name again?
Computing Tabulating Recording Corporation is
Yeah.
renamed to International Business Machines,
Okay.
aka IBM.
I'm glad we stuck with IBM. Go ahead.
Yeah, they everybody, they even say this. It made definitely for a more makes for a more boring sounding company. So I think neither one of those names are pretty exciting. Those are,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but IBM, y'all, that's when IBM was born. All right. The next up is and that was 1924. I forgot to
Okay.
include that date. That was this day, 1924. This day, 1946, the first electronic computer is unveiled. The much anticipated ENIAC. I'm not sure. I'm sure that's an acronym you're supposed to pronounce. So I'm going to try it in ENAC. The much anticipated ENAC was unveiled at the University of Pennsylvania, considered the first fully electronic computer as compared to electromechanical designs. The ENAC calculated 5,000 operations per second, 1,000 times faster than its contemporaries. ENAC occupied over 1,500 square feet of space, weighed 30 tons, and used 18,000 vacuum tubes.
Wow.
Those were what we
Like,
used to call supercomputers back in the day. When then supercomputers, super about them, they were just big But that was before we got into the sophistication and the snazziness of smaller components.
Yeah.
So
You so
that was
smart.
interesting. That was interesting. And last but not least, on this day in 1989, the first modern GPS satellite was launched. The first of 24 Block 2 GPS satellites was launched. Block 2 was the first modern GPS satellites that formed the modern GPS system as we know today.
Wow.
So when they started tracking us, when they figured out, hey,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
we could put stuff in people's pockets and we could track them every day, track them everywhere they go. We don't even
I know
need
I track
cameras.
my car when Messiah take it.
Hey,
I'm
you know
like,
what I'm
find my
saying?
car. Thanks,
Now,
Kia.
well,
Find
thank
my
you.
tell you ride.
But thanks everybody for listening to that one. That's our take on this day in technology history. What do you have, my love?
So, mine are always kind of sad.
Yeah, but
It just it just is. And so remember we talked about the Reese Taylor case. We were watching that Rosa Parks documentary, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. And that documentary was based on a book that was written by Dr. Jean Theo Harris. So today is actually the day that a grand jury in Henry County, Alabama refuses to indict the white attackers of a Black woman. Ding, 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 Reese Taylor. Around midnight on September 3rd, 1944, Reese Taylor, a 24-year-old Black married mother, was walking with neighbors headed home from a revival service at Rock Hill Holiness Church in Abbeville, Alabama. Before she made it home, a gang of white men kidnapped her, drove to a remote area in the woods, and raped her at gunpoint. After 6 of the men took turns raping her, they blindfolded her, drove her back to the road, and left her to walk home. Mrs. Taylor soon contacted the police, and the sheriff identified one of the suspects based on her description of the car. Hugo Wilson, the owner of the car, identified the 6 white men who raped Mrs. Taylor as Herbert Lovett, Luther Lee, Joe Culpepper, Dillard York, Billy Howerton, and Robert Gamble. Yet none of them were arrested. When the NAACP branch office in Montgomery, Alabama heard of Mrs. Taylor's rape and local officials' failure to respond, the chapter president sent NAACP Secretary Rosa Parks to investigate. After gathering details, Mrs. Park established a committee for equal justice to demand prosecution for Mrs. Taylor's attackers. Amid the publicity, Alabama Governor Chauncey Sparks also launched an investigation. In the course of the subsequent proceedings, Mrs. Taylor's character became the main matter of dispute. 4 of the 6 accused attackers admitted to having intercourse with her, but claimed she was a prostitute and a willing participant. The sheriff accused Mrs. Taylor of being nothing but a whore and alleged that she had been treated for venereal disease. Meanwhile, other white men in Abbeville described Mrs. Taylor as an upstanding, respectable woman who abided by the town's racial and sexual mores. And one of the accused attackers, Joe Culpepper, admitted that Mrs. Taylor had been gang raped at gunpoint and that he and his fellow attackers had been looking for a woman that night. Despite this information and widespread national support for Mrs. Taylor's cause, on February 14, 1945, an all-white, all-male jury failed to return an indictment against any of the men accused of raping Mrs. Taylor. The men were never prosecuted. In the months after Mrs. Taylor's attack, she received constant death threats and her home was firebombed by white supremacists. The Reese Taylor case, though rarely cited, is credited as being a catalyst for the modern civil rights movement. In 2011, Alabama legislature apologized to Mrs. Taylor for the state's failure to prosecute her attackers. And a few years ago, Oprah did a documentary about Reese Taylor. So for those of you who have never seen that, I encourage you to go see that as well. It is traumatizing, but it's our truth. And we can't get away from that any more than we can get away from the good things. So The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, that's now streaming on Peacock, or get the book by Dr. Jean Theo Harris and the Reese Taylor story that was produced by Oprah.
I don't even have words for that. Like, even when they admitted it, when they wouldn't even let them get in trouble for it. That's what's insane about this whole tale. This whole, I don't even know just certain things that just steal. You hear about certain things that just steal your words from you. And this is one of those cases where guilt was admitted, literally, like, yeah, even, but again, like I said, like I try to always remember, if you don't know your history, you doomed to repeat it. If you don't know if you don't have a good understanding of what people are capable of, they'll get over you on anything. And this is just one of those things,
And I am always cognizant of two things Zora Neale Hurston said. One was that colored women are the muse of the world. And that was also confirmed. Malcolm X also said that the Black woman is the most unprotected, unloved person on the planet. And Hurston also said that if we're silent about our pain, they will kill us and say we enjoyed it. So I know that hearing us talk about these things is uncomfortable for some people. And you have your perspective on the truth. We have ours. But one thing that we cannot do is be silent about it.
Right. I concur.
Don't be mad at me about it. Do your own research. Just do your own research, right?
You're amazed at what you find in the book.
I feel compelled, honestly. I feel compelled by my God and by my ancestors to do this work, whether it's educating or on this show or just being who I am. And I'm gonna talk my stuff. I'm gonna talk my ish. That's what I do, right? And I can't imagine living a life where I let people silence me from the truth. And telling the truth is really the only thing that helps me sleep at night.
Seriously, because it's what set you free.
So you do you. But I'm gonna always do me.
Got to. That's your primary responsibility.
That's it. That said, let's talk about today.
Let's talk about today.
Today. So the show is called Just Love.
Just love.
Which we do. That's what you want to do? You gonna do the heart symbol? You next anyway.
I mean.
All right. So y'all, we know holidays are pretty much scams. We get it. It's some kind of way for capitalism to capitalize.
Yep.
We get that
retail holidays.
And to a certain extent, we do participate. We do to a certain extent, but we're never big on, we try to show each other we love each other all the time. Right.
Right.
So like we had our little pre-Valentine's weekend. Thank you, boo.
Thank you, baby.
That was nice. We went to San Antonio so the Milken Award was given to Deante Lopez at Basis Charter School in San Antonio Friday. So part of what happens when you're a Milken Award winner is that they invite you to come back to all of the award ceremonies in your state. And so I've been in Texas since 2019, but obviously the pandemic took over like those first couple of years. So we were at the award ceremony last year in Fort Bend. Was it Fort Bend? I think that's
Fort Worth. Yep.
And then this year it was in San Antonio. So we decided to just stay down there, and we went to a phenomenal play. We saw Fences at the Little Carver Center. Mm-hmm. Y'all.
That was amazing.
Other than Denzel, that's one of the best Troy Maxons I have seen. That is one of the best Troy Maxons I have seen. Yeah. So kudos to that particular group. Even what's his name? Gabriel, the gentleman who played Gabriel. Oh, he was phenomenal.
Yes, there was some phenomenal phenomenal actors and actresses in that particular play. That was like one of the first I've been to in a very long time, and I was glad we went. That was a really good, really, really good way to spend time and bond and just kick it, because that's what we do, So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was, definitely time well spent and, an opportunity well worth taking. So if anybody out there, you get an opportunity to see Fences live,
Yes.
check it out. Do
Do
yourself
it.
the favor. It's a phenomenal play to see. Out, other than it's a great representation of the film. So
Mhm.
they did a lot of
Well, I
justice.
guess the film is a great representation of the play because Denzel and Viola, I think they were on Broadway with their play too.
Oh,
Mhm.
I don't know which one came first.
The
I
play.
don't.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
my mistake. The movie is a if the movie now I understand why the movie was so good
Yeah,
because
because I think those two were actually on Broadway. I know Denzel was.
yeah,
I think Viola was too. But and she's by far the best roles you ever gonna see, Viola Davis. But
right.
she's the best whatever she plays. So
Oh
that's a
yeah,
uh
Miss Davis,
the
Miss
only two
Davis.
black people in there besides the cast.
Might have been one other person, or
Maybe. I was
maybe.
looking the whole time. But that was odd, the cast, because they did the original and they gave a little caveat at the beginning. They got on the PA and said, we're going to do it exactly as August Wilson intended it. The language will be the language that he used in the play. And I'm like, are they saying that for us? Or are they saying that for everybody else here? Right? Like, because I knew the play had
Well,
nigga, 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 nigga. Right?
well,
I teach that play. But I was just wondering, I'm like, are y'all saying that for us? Because we're the only chips in this cookie? Like y'all like, uh-oh, Negroes coming in the door, right? Code red. Or did y'all say that for the other people? I was confused, but it's whatever. So it was, to me, I think it was good that the cast, because we sat right in the front on the first row, and the cast got a chance to see us there. So they weren't being black people constantly in this room calling each other the N-word surrounded by white people. Because that would have been awkward.
yeah, that'd have
That would
been
have been awkward. So
a non-representative, crowd, that didn't, because it was a lot of different, ethnicities there. Mostly, white folk, but it was some other ethnicities there as well. But I'm glad they put that caveat in there, especially for if that's the first time any, the folks in the audience had ever seen that particular, that particular play or movie, that they be ready for it.
because they would have been on the news. We went to the
That
play and they said,
that part,
mhm,
but that, but the, our cultures is everywhere and our, cultures everywhere in pop culture. So I'm pretty sure 98.9% of the population are familiar with anything that that we're already talking about. So slurs and everything. So
speaking of
I'm sure.
which, they still mad about Rihanna in that Super Bowl. People who can't even dance, people who can't, like your whole family for the past 18 generations can't dance. And and so for me, part of that is there's a certain amount of shucking and jiving from us that they feel that they're entitled to. And she didn't participate in that. She didn't participate in it. Nor should she have to.
Yeah.
Nor should she have to. And I'm okay with that. Like I like it. I like the fact that she did unapologetically what she does. That's who she is. Like whatever. Um, that was just my
Yeah.
I
I
don't even
mean,
follow Rihanna like that. Like I've been listening to Christian most of Christian music the entire time she's been out, but I'm not like obtuse. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Her songs are so popular, you hear them in the store all the time. Like my kids listen to the stuff, so it's like,
Yeah, I got a maybe one or two. Can't consider myself a fan, but I got one or two songs that I think that I would say I listen to whenever they play it. But she's an excellent artist. I haven't heard anything where I'm like, oh, like why you do that? She is just not really my vibe, not really my thing. So but when she does have a bang, I tune into it. And, what I liked about it is, she, like you said, she was unapologetic. She got up there, she was pregnant, she did a thing, and she did a thing like, hey, I'm doing it within my capabilities. You either like it or you don't.
that girl's a whole
Um,
billionaire. And you know
yeah,
why? Because your wife contributes to her billionaire. Okay.
yeah,
Fenty, Shade 420. This is what I wear on the show. So y'all can do whatever y'all want to do. Y'all can say whatever y'all want to say. But Fenty, okay, Shade 420, that is what I do. Fat water and all that. Yes, that's me.
yeah. And so, it's always good to see it's always good to see somebody get up there and do their thing,
Mhm.
their way,
Yes.
and not, like you say, not kowtow to the expectations of the masses, But go out there and put on a performance to the best of your abilities, and who like it gonna like it, who
That's it.
gonna hate it, and let it like, hey, y'all hired me for the Super Bowl. I ain't hired y'all for me to be on the Super Bowl. So y'all gonna take what y'all paid. Y'all gonna get what y'all paid for.
Yes.
And so, but I also heard she didn't get paid for that, but that may be speculation.
Well, they
So
don't get paid for that. They don't get paid for it, but it's the exposure, right? And she hasn't done a
right,
show in
okay,
several years. So that's why I was actually proud of her for actually doing a plug. She did a plug for her Fenty products while she was up there. Remember, she did the little pat the oil off her face. That was a
right.
Fenty product that she was promoting while she was up there. So, and I think the dancers had on Fenty products, her clothing line.
Oh, well,
So
I
yeah,
guess
that girl is brilliant.
Well,
Okay,
I
that
guess
was
the
marketing.
exposure is second to none.
Yeah,
If it gets you, yeah, you ain't got. If you do this show, you ain't got it. We ain't
it's
got to
the
pay you
Super
because
Bowl.
everything that come after, we're gonna make up for. So
That's
I
it.
guess that makes sense. I never, I thought
She is
in
brilliant.
my mind, if you on stage, you getting paid. That's in my mind. But I guess um, reality is much different. So that's interesting. But again, it's the not what you get up front, it's what you get. After it's the residual.
It's a different
So.
mindset.
Mhm.
It's a different mindset. Like broke people, they would have been like, "Oh, you're not going to pay me. I'm not going to do it." But a billionaire was like, "Okay, so it's the prime time." They said that 500 million more people tuned in for her performance than they did for the entire Super Bowl.
That says a lot. That says a
So she could
lot.
care less. And I could be
Right.
exaggerating. Maybe it was 5 million. I don't know.
But
Anyway,
still,
Fenty,
I
Fenty
mean,
beautiful.
on top of what was already watching the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
and then you add, even if it is just 5 million, that's still that's 5 million people who wouldn't watching the
Listen.
game. That's amazing,
Mhm.
actually. You got a serious fan base if you can pull that off.
Correct. And so that's why we don't care. We're unbothered. We're just gonna, it's Black History Month. So,
Yeah.
and that was
Do
a
your
very
thing,
black Super
sister.
Bowl.
Do
Mhm.
your thing, sister. Do your thing. Oh
So,
yeah.
you ready?
That's why we here. Cause we ready.
So, y'all listen. We want to preface this entire rest of this conversation by saying that we are not experts. Okay. So don't come in here talking about, oh, I looked this up and I saw good. We want you to share with us. This is an ongoing conversation.
Because
We
we just
are
started doing research on it too. So
we're just learning, right? We're just learning. And when we find things that we think are, especially if it's on the actual day of the holiday, we typically don't get to do a show on the actual holiday. We
right.
take that day off or whatever. But as you can hear from my voice, I'm actually not feeling my best today. I don't know what this is, but I'm just not feeling my best. But once I saw that, I was like, we're doing a show. It was like 4 o'clock. The show starts at 6. I was like, babe, we're doing a show today because the people
Yeah.
got to know.
Like we got to at least breach this
The
conversation.
people got to know.
And and it's interesting, I think back as far as I can remember, just having, holidays and stuff just kind of for lack of a better description, just kind of dropped on your lap and said, all right, this is what we're doing, this is what we're celebrating, have fun with it somehow.
Ooh,
And never really, and you never really, you know, question it. Well, I knew I grew up in a household where you couldn't question nothing, so I stopped asking why we do this, and
shout
because
out to Mama Teresa.
I got tired of I didn't want to get I learned early not to question, so I just kind of did what it was, but to I would have some of the stuff I learned today I would have never thought you know it's what is behind all of this Valentine's Day stuff, you know. Um, it's an interesting thing, this is why education is important, this is why you gotta, you gotta know. You gotta have some type of understanding and everything. It ain't always what you see. What you see ain't always what you get. And so and just blindly believing anything is really dangerous.
Listen. So I called my spouse. Babe, I know I'm not feeling good. I know we talked about, maybe not doing the show. But guess what I had heard? Guess what I
What you
found out?
what you had heard.
What I had heard was that the origins of this holiday, and I should have known, it's pagan, like not saying I didn't know it was pagan, but I'm saying like the other half of it. Like, of course, we make up stuff all the time, but it's almost like knowing that Christmas is not the birth of Christ, but it's a holiday to celebrate the birth of Christ, probably doesn't stop you from celebrating Christmas, you know?
Right.
But when I found out about like Saturnalia and stuff like that, I was just like, oh, so I mean, for me, I'm just not going to. When people say Jesus is the reason for the season, I'm like, to me, that's disingenuous, right? Like I feel like
Right.
you put that on top of it because you really want to do some other stuff. And so you put that on there to like kind of pacify yourself or make yourself feel better about it. So this past year, we really didn't do anything for Christmas. And I didn't feel
Right.
bad about it at all. I feel like the more I learned about myself, the more I learned about my history, the more I learned about my ancestors, the less I feel the need to participate in certain things, right?
Great. Correct.
So if you guys are listening and you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, there's a lot of heightened witchcraft energy around today's holiday. And I ain't talking now when I say witchcraft, you know, black people, y'all be thinking about like hoodoo, voodoo, stuff like that. Like y'all call y'all auntie a witch because she painted her porch paint blue. That ain't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like people saying, okay, let's celebrate Lupercalia. Talk to us
Which,
a little bit about Lupercalia, babe. What did you find?
well, the little I know is this is what Valentine's came from, which is basically a celebration of a pagan god of fertility, Lupercus. And it's also a celebration of the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, who was supposedly raised by a lady wolf,
A wolf, the loop,
like,
the loop. Mm-hmm.
and so
And the
it's
story is similar to Moses now. Remember the story in the Bible about Moses floating down the river in a basket, Pharaoh's daughter picking him up. According to the story, Remus and Romulus were also placed in the water to prevent them from being murdered,
mhm.
right? And instead of Pharaoh's daughter picking up out of the water, they were picked up by a she wolf.
And it's interesting because the this it was named after a Saint Valentinus, I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Mm-hmm.
And it was given, Valentine's Day named by the Roman Catholic Church. But it was but that was given more of a Christianization to call it Valentine's Day to make it more appealing to, those who converted to Christianity. Um it is, I mean, it is, and this Valentinus dude is a trip, how he was martyred and made as the saint of true love and marriage. He would apparently, at a time when, the Rome wanted to recruit people into the military, they wanted, single men, and men, people were getting married in secret, which was what Valentinus was doing. He had converted to Christianity and began marrying people, and in secret. And when he was found out, he was basically executed, for doing that, and that happened actually on February 14th in 269. And so this is, it's incredibly fascinating, at how, these deities that they were supposedly worshiping was, all, linked to other Greek gods and linked to other deities. And it's like, it's interesting. They had things like, you know, what orgies and celebrated pedophilia, and and it did like and it was supposed to be like fertility rites. It was all about sex and debauchery, like a lot of the other pagan holidays.
Yep.
It's a trip. One of to cite my source, I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. What is the gentleman's name? What is this?
And
This
I
is
just put something in the
from
chat for those of you who are watching us live on Facebook. And it's just from the History Channel. It's not even like that deep. It's out there.
right.
So I put a link to the History Channel's page dedicated to Lupercalia. And Lupercalia is actually scheduled for tomorrow, And so it just like with Saturnalia, how they have like the winter solstice and they have all these holidays, and it doesn't have to be on the exact same day, but it's around in that time frame. And so they just took something and lumped them together, right? And so February, which is the festival of purification, is celebrated on February 15th. And
Mhm.
February is actually another name for Hades, the god of the underworld. Okay. So that's just something to consider, right? And it's supposed to be for purification. And so that's where we actually get the month of February. And they say it's the ritual sacrifices and of animals, and the blood sacrifices are supposed to be for purification. And part of the Lupercalia festival is where they take two young boys who are supposed to be symbolic of Remus and Romulus, and they sacrifice, what was it, a goat and a dog?
Goats and dogs. Yep.
Yeah, they sacrifice a male goat and a male dog, and it's done and it started off in front of the Lupercal cave, which is like a wolf den cave basically. And the Luperci are a group of Roman priests, and then once they sacrifice them, they put the blood of the animals on the foreheads of the two naked Luperci, which is like, I guess, the priest, I don't know, and then they just run through the city and hit women with, like, they call them thongs of February, and it's like the goat hide from the newly sacrificed goat, and they just go through the city and hit women. The
They
two
say
naked men, yeah.
they say women would line up to get hit because they say if you get hit by that, that it's supposed to make you fertile. You know.
And they said men would randomly choose a woman's name from the jar to be coupled up with during the celebration, and they just
Mhm.
stayed together. Like
It
they
was
just,
a lottery.
yeah, they fell in love and got married. And I'm like, Lord,
Remember what I mentioned? Remember back in the elementary school days when we had to pull a random name from the girls' box and a random name from the boys' box, and whoever name you got, you bought a Valentine for.
that's it.
It's like we just asked to do these things, and we don't know where these things come from. Part of the one of the things that I came across about the month of February it was also sacred to a Roman goddess by the name of Juno Februata. And this again, I'm getting this information from Truth Unedited. I follow this particular person on YouTube. I'm not saying it's truth. I'm still doing my research, but it's some interesting information.
Well, it's a
Uh,
lot out there about Juno Pepper. I mean, I'm just looking at it now, and it's just talking about the goddess of
so she was
fever of
supposedly,
love.
yeah, she's supposedly the goddess of the fever of love, marriage, and women all together. And she was also celebrated on the 15th. There's some interesting alignments here. It's like it's like a celebration of all types of deities on this day. Because there's the Lupercus, who supposedly, also somehow a derivative of Pan, who is also a derivative of Baal, who's also a
Bale, uh-huh.
derivative of Nimrod. So it's like you have all of these different, these different, deities,
That's
rolled
it.
up into this one, celebrate this one festival. And you think back, like, man, I think back, because I'm gonna be honest, I never enjoyed this holiday. I never this holiday never sat right with me. I never been, one of them people that I can't wait for Valentine's Day. Like, I didn't care about the candy, the cars. I didn't care about none of that. I just, red wasn't even a color I liked, much less pink. you know. So it was like I didn't, as growing up, I never really even wanted anything to do with this particular holiday. And again, it's not because I, knew anything. It was just something in my spirit. I was just like, yeah, I don't particularly like this day, And as I became older, I'm like, why is this a day of love when I can express love every single day? If I'm doing it every day, I don't need one day out of a year to express, love to people. I could do that every day of the week because
Mm-hmm.
that's how I'm built. But it's a I've kind of summed it up to a retail holiday. This has become more of of a way for retailers to bring in some dollars,
Yeah.
right, rightfully so. We live in a, capitalistic society, money make things move, and it is what it is, but when you think back on, when you kind of do some research, and I'm pretty sure it's deeper than the stuff that I found. I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's probably so much more to it, if we had a little bit more time, I could have dug a little bit deeper, but I was glad to do the little research we were able to do today. But yeah, kind of going back to the sacrifices, I thought this was interesting. Apparently the reason they sacrificed, particularly, they called out specifically goats and dogs that they sacrificed, and and according to the research that I did, according to the research, the goats and the dogs were sacrificed due to their sexual instincts, which is you know crazy to me, but at the same time, you have no idea of the perspective of the people, that live there, and whether they were, trying to mimic nature or whatever the case may have been, or I don't know. I'm just, shooting ideas off the top of my head, but
It's hard to make sense of it,
yeah,
because for
it's
us,
really, it really is.
like even the idea of Cupid, right? So like we tend to think about Cupid being a cute little kid, a little baby with like a little diaper on, the little bow and arrow. But in that time period, Cupid was a boy, like a young man. It wasn't even like a child per se, like almost like a preteen or something like that. And he had two kinds of arrows. The first arrow was like it had a sharp golden point on it, and that's the kind of one that we typically see, like Cupid making people fall in love. And then the other one was like they said it had like a blunt tip with just lead on it. And the gold arrow was like filled with uncontrollable desire. And then the other one made you feel
Lust.
repulsed by somebody. Yeah. So one was like lust and the other one was like repulsion. So say for instance, you were married to somebody and y'all were like madly in love forever. And then all of a sudden Cupid shot your spouse with the blunt arrow. Your spouse will leave you because your spouse is next, and just chalking up commitments to whether or not somebody's shot you with an arrow, like just that
Right.
kind of stuff. And then also there is a famous painting about Cupid. Was it a Aphrodite blinding Cupid, like putting on the what do you call
The
it? The blindfold for Cupid, right?
mhm.
And so part of the idea behind Cupid being blindfolded was that you can't help who you fall in love with, right? So if a man falls in love with a boy, he could say that Cupid shot me with the arrow. I couldn't help myself. Love is blind, right? Love is what you feel with your heart, is not what you see with your eyes. And so Cupid was just out there randomly, blindly shooting people. And so people had no choice about who they lusted after or who they chose to be with. It was like a luck of the draw, right? Like I can't
Right.
help it that I feel this way about a child. And so I just, I guess what I wanted us to think about tonight was just this idea um, that has carried over through time. We still
Mhm.
have people saying, I couldn't help myself.
Right.
There was just something that made me feel that way. And so like participate in pedophilia or whatever it is that you do, and you feel entitled to that because you felt like you didn't have a choice. That is not new. And this holiday is all about that. There are two other symbols that we should talk about for Valentine's Day, and one is the heart.
Well, before you go to that real quick, I
Okay.
did want to kind of, circle back about, what you said about Cupid. The two arrows, the two arrow concept. I've only seen the pointed arrow, but it's interesting because Cupid is basically responsible for whether you're in love and when you fall out of love, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Cupid is the keeper,
Yep.
so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
controls whether or not, controls when it happens, how long it happens, and when it stops. I think that's interesting. I never that piece I never really deduced until right now. I thought Cupid was just like, boom, you in love forever, and it's up to you whether you stay that way. But apparently, he shoot jokers and come back and say, yeah, y'all done, and shoot
Mm-hmm.
them again. According to their theories. That is, I thought that was pretty interesting development.
And
We'll
I
see
also,
what our conversation about this is going to be next year after we do some more in-depth
yeah, because
research.
I'm definitely gonna do some more digging. And part of the interesting thing for me about the Cupid scenario is that it seems that there's this sentiment that once you fall out of lust with a person, then that should be the end of the relationship.
Right.
You know,
That's all the relationship is
uh-huh.
based on.
Yeah, so like it starts based on lust and sexuality, and once you're no longer satisfied with that, then you're entitled to go be somewhere else,
Right.
do some other thing, and so, it's like when people say, "Oh, I don't know why I cheated." Cupid shot me with the arrow. I couldn't help
Right.
myself. I cheated because you weren't satisfying me anymore or something like that. And that seems like a totally logical response to, relationships. Or that I'm just gonna be with anybody who makes me feel a certain way. Anybody who makes me tingle. That's what it is. Because that's how I was. That's Cupid. And so, yeah, I thought it was good to have a conversation about this stuff today and the messages that we're sending. And I think the next thing I was going to talk about was the symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the symbolism. And so the heart, is supposed to represent the buttocks, as far as Gump would say. It's the upside down booty cheeks. And, we always wonder like why we have the heart represented like that, and the human organ looks nothing like that. But I guess if they say, if you got my booty cheeks, then you got me, boo.
I mean, hey, we do it. We together, right?
So that's how you know that I love you, or that's how you know that you love me, because these cheeks excite you, and I don't know. I just, how we talk about this kind of stuff and have children, constantly playing with things. Like I remember as a girl, that's one of the first things I learned how to draw was a heart.
Yeah.
And that's, we draw hearts and your name and his name and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like all this programming that we
Right.
do when we're young. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to talk about was Aphrodite and the rose, why we give each other roses for Valentine's Day, or why men give women roses for Valentine's Day. And it's supposed to be symbolic of the female genitalia. And so you can do your own research. I don't have to, if you've ever seen one, I'm telling the truth, that it resembles that. But also, there's this toy that is taking the world by storm, and it's got women saying they don't even need a man no more. And it's called what? The rose. So just something to think about. It's right there in our faces,
They
and
just be playing in our face.
and you're going to feel how you feel about it. This is just some stuff that we found. We're not telling anybody what to believe. We're not telling you how to move in this world. We're not even telling you like that you should agree with us. These are just things that we came across that help
Yeah.
shape, how we exist as the Dunlaps in our household.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that we found this stuff out on the actual day. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that when you're a seeker,
yeah, things don't happen by accident.
when you're a seeker, when the, or what is the, when it says that when the
When the
student is
student
ready, the
is ready,
teacher
the teacher will
appears.
come.
So
And
that's
ain't
where
no,
we are in our walk.
yeah,
That's where we are.
ain't no judgment, because again, we spend most of our lives just kind of chugging along, and and then this thing called the internet came
Mhm.
about, and people with the information start sharing the information, and you kind of start doing your math, and you're like, wait a minute. Is
Mhm.
that why that happened? Is that what was going on when we were doing that? Is that what was happening when we celebrated that?
And that's why
So
people that laugh at us, like, I mean, just think about the fact that there are whole witchcraft groups celebrating the same holiday that you're celebrating. You're calling yourself a Christian and you're judging everything as demonic, but you're doing the same thing they're doing. Like, that's why they don't take you seriously.
well, you doing it too. I
You're doing
mean,
it too. You don't even know. At least they're upfront about it. At least they're honest about it. They know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. You're doing the same thing they're doing, but you just put another name or a label on top of it to make yourself feel like you're extra holy. But you're doing the
mhm.
same thing that they're doing. And so just do a search. Just run a search on Facebook
Yeah,
and
I
just
mean,
put Lupercalia and see what comes up.
that's a beautiful thing about being alive during this time. If you want to know something,
No
you can
excuse.
know it. If you want to find something out, you can find it out. Even the hardest things, there's somebody out there with that information. Depending, regardless of how you want to search for it. If you seeking, you'll find it. So it's a wonderful time to be alive. If you're a seeker, if you're trying to find information, and build on yourself, this is, this is the era for you, and this is the time for you, because if there's anything to learn, this is the time to learn it, because it's right there at your fingertips.
This is that age of Aquarius that people have been talking about for so long, right? Where the blinders are starting to come off, where people are starting to see things differently than they've seen them, and that, people are starting to have so many things, revealed to them. And again, you can choose to walk in this world however you choose to walk in this world, but feigning ignorant, just say, this is the choice that I make, right? And it doesn't really bother me like that. If that bothers you, then fine, don't do it. That doesn't bother me. And that's okay. Like, I don't think anybody's going to judge you. But I would love to see churches stop doing Easter egg hunts. I would love to stop seeing churches do Valentine's Day stuff for children. I would love to see churches stop, if you're going to do a sermon or a play on Christmas, then that's fine. But like, the whole Secret Santa at a church, like, that doesn't make sense to me. And so I know that I'm, a part of a growing group of believers that's really struggling with some of this ideology that comes out of the church, and it's just we call that two-faced in our community. When you saying one thing, but you're doing something else, like, it's hypocritical, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not perfect. My spouse is not perfect, but I guess what I'm saying is that gone are the days where we can just continue to participate in things that are not aligned with who we say we are.
Because I know one of my goals in life is to not be so rigid that when I receive new information, especially new information that resonate with me, that I can't change, that I can't update my operating system and be like, you know what, I can't believe, like, this whole time I've been, flying blind and just going along to get along. And I had, no idea what I was doing. I had, no idea what I was evoking when I did this. No idea, because you don't even know what your true power is. And so when you're out here participating in these things, you don't know what your actions are doing, in the spaces you can't see. And so this, and so, I'm, it's when you start to ask those questions, why are we doing this? And once you get something contrary to what you believe, that sparks questions about everything.
Yeah.
Okay, if we doing, then why are we doing this? And if we're doing that, then why are we doing that? And so it'll send you down a path of discovery. You'd be surprised at what you'll find once you start asking questions. I can, I know sometimes we get frustrated with the young folks who question tradition, and it's because they grew up with the encyclopedia in their hand. They grew up with the anthology, with the almanac, the ultimate almanac in their hand. They grew up with it in their hands. They didn't grow up like it wasn't like us where we had to go either to the library and wait in line to get on, to use the internet, or go to your cousin that could afford that could afford to have an internet, they could afford a computer and an internet connection back in the day when it was real expensive. But today technology is high technology, information technology is what I want to say, is everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you have information in the palm of your hands and all you got to do is what is, when did, how to, what kind of, you can Google, you can search on all of these things and learn something, even if it's not true. You can find a whole lot of truth. You can find a whole lot of lies, but it's at your fingertips.
That's it.
And if you're smart and savvy enough, you know the right places to go for good information. And so sometimes we get frustrated with young folks who don't adhere to tradition, who don't adhere to the things that we once just kind of did. And it's just like, well, if you do a little research, that this is not what you're telling me it is. Like, it's like learning, when you learn Santa Claus wasn't real, you just shattered your whole paradigm, and somewhere in your mind you had made it up that it was really a dude coming down your chimney
and couldn't sleep at night, like thinking that you actually heard reindeer and bells and stuff. Like, can you imagine as a kid?
You just Jedi mind trick yourself into this stuff, and then you become, and then you meet that one friend who got a cousin or an uncle that's hip to it, and they say,
Yep.
man, you know that ain't real, right? And then they go tell the school and blow the whole class and just
Yes.
throw the
My,
whole class into a tizzy. And
yep.
everybody's like, what? Oh, and kids having meltdowns, and they go home and they're just like, mama, I don't even know what to
Uh-huh.
do. Like, I
Our
found
oldest
out.
son got in trouble for that in pre-K. He was in pre-K. He was in
Wow.
pre-K, and I never told them Santa Claus. I never told the children that. And he was in pre-K, and his teacher, Jackie Burns, if you ever hear this, we miss you. Thank you for being such a phenomenal start to my baby's education. He was in school, and she said, Mario, you can't tell the kids that. Like, the kids were crying, and he told them, he was like, I'm sorry, but I I I can't give that fat black man credit for what my mama did. And he said, why should black kids think that a fat white man gave them something for free? He said, when does that ever happen? In pre-K.
Yeah, I remember when my son did the same thing. He got to a certain age where you started talking about Christmas, and you talk to him, like you try to talk to him at their level, and one day he just was, he gave me a look like, yeah, I know that, I saw you rapping all that, right? I know, I saw you when you bought the stuff, so you're not fooling me. But I never really sold him
Mm-hmm.
on the notion of Santa Claus. I never really sold him that,
Because this idea that if you're good or bad,
right?
like, first of all, that doesn't even align with who you say you are as a Christian. But even with the Christianity piece, like, I am, one thing I would credit the pandemic for is allowing me the time and the space to get off the hamster wheel, right? Because, like, when you don't have time to think about things, you just kind of like can go, and it's like repetitive, it's habitual, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just starting to think about my Christianity from the perspective of, like, who am I beyond white supremacy? My relationship to God is problematic because of white supremacy. And as a Black Christian, there's no way around that, right? And so one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I had to start to interrogate within myself was, why this belief that anything that is indigenous to Black people, African people, in the mainland, or throughout the diaspora, why is it all of a sudden, why does all of that have to be pagan? What does everything that Black people do have to be witchcraft, right? When, as we can see from today's conversation, it might be quite the opposite,
Right.
right? It might be quite the opposite. Like, well, you were already doing witchcraft and you don't even know it.
Right. And, the things we question, that we blindly question and consider it this because somebody else told us, might be the real spiritual work, might be the real spiritual
Correct.
practices, and then the stuff that we, blindly celebrate year in and year out, are the, like, really, like, kind of dark, from you
And it
when
don't
you
serve your people, right? Whatever you give attention to is what you're magnifying. Whatever you give attention to, you're empowering. And every year you devote your time, your energy, your money, right? You greet people, happy Valentine's. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
you put your intentionality behind some stuff that you theoretically don't even align with. And so we wonder why we can't get anywhere. We wonder why we can't get free. Because you're giving all your time, attention, and energy to the oppressor. Like, how is that gonna help you?
Right.
So these are just conversations that we've been having, and there's no judgment here, y'all. Like, we really are just seeking. We
Yeah.
just want to know so that we can do the right things.
We
That
learning too.
that's just where we are. And so we don't judge anybody who feels differently than we feel. We're not trying to condemn anybody. Definitely no shame attached to this conversation. But once you know better, you have to do better, right? And
Right.
that's the thing. And it's like, I get it. A lot of people don't want to know because they don't want to be held responsible for what to do with that new information. But you heard it now.
Yeah, when we grew up in a time where we seen so many curtains pulled down, so many things exposed, and
Uh-huh.
it's just, again, like you said, the age of Aquarius, the where you started to question, like, wait a minute, that don't make sense. When you just think about the things we just blindly adhere to, and they just get to a point where you've seen enough lies, you've seen enough cover-ups, you've seen enough, blatant hypocrisy. You just see this and you start to question, like, wait a minute. okay, what else have I been adhering to that wasn't true, or that was, that was backwards, or, that was probably wrong in general? So it makes you, kind of analyze everything, kind of take an inventory,
It
like,
should.
man, like, because like I said, after, coming to terms with some of the things that I've come to terms with, and, in my adult life, I'm like, yeah, I have to really, you know, um, reconcile some of this stuff, and really, come to understand, like, yeah, I may have been, blindly following some things that probably, but again, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know.
That's it.
And if nobody around you knows, how do you expect to know? And that's the blessing, like I said, of being able to witness the age of the internet, to witness, information. If knowledge is power, to be able to say, I literally got the power in the palm of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to know something, I can know something, or I can find somebody that knows it. So, you know, interesting. I mean, it's not just interesting, it's fascinating.
Yeah. That's why I'm glad you do the technology piece, because without that stuff,
right,
we probably wouldn't be having these conversations.
right.
It's just like, when we talk about in education, how technology and access to it, that digital divide is like the color line that Du Bois
Mm-hmm.
talked about in Souls of Black Folk. And so those who don't have access to this information, we think about like small towns where they're just cut off, right? Or even towns like here in Maynard. Like a lot of people here in Maynard have horrible internet service. And so
Right.
just thinking about what that means for them as far as being able to access the information they need to change their lives, to just change their entire lived experience. It is it's definitely an equity issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely an equity. It's a social justice issue. So
Yep.
yeah.
Because the internet is that, like they say, it's a web, and that it literally connects everything.
Mm-hmm.
People, places, ideas, whatever you could think of. It is the what we call in the IT world, it's a hub. It is the central
Yes.
hub for all information. So this was a
I
great
enjoyed tonight's
conversation.
conversation with you. I'm gonna go cook you some Valentine's dinner.
That'd be awesome.
I
I
like your meat, so
appreciate
I
it.
figured I'd cook you some meat.
Oh, I appreciate it. I ain't even finna. You know what? That's how we gonna close it today. You know what?
I mean, I picked you because you're meat.
I'm not even gonna touch that one. So on that note, we want to thank y'all for tuning in. You were in it again with the Dunlaps. I am your co-host, Deante.
And I'm his wife, the lover of his meat, Shekema.
And we are the Dunlaps. You see the mess y'all get into when y'all tune in. Hope y'all have fun. Thank y'all for joining. We'll be back again. Same black time, same black channel. 2 p.m. 2 p.m. 6
See,
p.m.
I got your mind now. Look at
I know, right? Got me all discombobulated.
Doing that Cupid shuffle over
there. Oh man. But tune in with us again next week. Same time, 6 p.m. Tuesday evenings, Central Standard Time. Get in with us. I hope y'all had a good time. Again, I'm Deante.
And I'm Shekema.
And we are the Dunlaps. You've been
We're
here
the
with us.
Dunlaps.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good evening.
We'll be live streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Give us about an hour to load that for you.
And send us some feedback. Send us some feedback.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.